I'm Ethan Lyles.
And I'm Sean Kitchen.
And you're listening to the Northwest Corner Podcast.
This episode of the Northwest Corner Podcast is brought to you in part by Walmart. Save money, live better. And by Men's Warehouse. You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. And special shout out to our main sponsor, Upstate Exposures Magazine. We share the stories of the people, places, events, history, businesses, and music of upstate South Carolina. Always free to read. Go to upstateexposures.com.
Roger Upton, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Where in the upstate of South Carolina do you like to hike?
I like to hike the Mountain Bridge Wilderness area.
Where's that?
That's actually the technical name for the area that includes Jones Gap, Caesar's Head, Ravencliff Falls, that area. And, that is a wilderness area. Most people don't think of it as that, but that's a mountain bridge.
So there's no marked trails over there?
There are marked trails. It's a rough area, actually, once you get down into kind of what they call the Blue Ridge Escarpment. On up past Jones Gap. As a matter of fact, one trail there that we did, it's a loop, and it is considered one of the hardest, toughest trails you'll find anywhere. And so,
really, here in our backyard,
right here, and it's a combination of two or three trails. But we hiked that back in late spring, and it really was rough. But it's got what most hikers consider the best view of the Blue Ridge Mountains in South Carolina. Because you were looking, you've been to Pretty Place up there, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's called Pretty
But
Place.
that looks from the mountains out sort of onto the foothills of Greenville.
Yeah. This view actually is on the downside of that. You're looking back up towards where the mountains kind of form and come down into the valley there, the gap. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's worth the climb, and that's the thing. It's a long climb to get to it, but it's
a long
nice.
Climb up to Pretty Place too. Going up to what is that? Camp Greenville. Who owns that property?
I think that's actually them. What's that called?
Camp Greenville is what I've always called it.
What's the official? There's an official name though. I'm trying to think of what it's called. That I learned is not Pretty Place. I
haven't been there since like fourth grade.
That's something I picked up in when I went to North Greenville College over there. They called it Pretty Place. Let's go to Pretty Place.
Because it's like this.
It's a really pretty place.
Have you ever been up there?
This is a pretty place.
My wife has. She's taken quite a few pictures. I haven't gotten up there yet.
Really
it's
nice.
on my to-do list.
Just
and I remember when the first time she came back from there with pictures. I said, "Oh, where's this at?" And she said, "Oh, it's at Pretty Place." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Why do they call it that?"
I wonder.
She looked at me like I just farted in church, and said,
"You're not from South
because it's a pretty place." And I guess that is obvious.
Sense. Yeah. Well, do you go anywhere out of state other than like North Carolina, like around here, like North Georgia? I know you've got like the Tallulah Gorge. Which is real pretty over there.
I'm real fond of that area.
Panther Creek Falls.
I worked a job that had me out through Tallulah Gorge quite a bit. Oh, that's beautiful.
That's the southern end of the Blue Ridge, and it's nice. I mean, I like it out there. You get you mentioned places in South Carolina, and one place a lot of folks don't consider is the Ellicott Rock Wilderness. Most people have never heard of the Ellicott Rock.
I was just going to say, don't know what you're talking about.
That is a beautiful wilderness area, and it has a distinction of being the only wilderness that encompasses parts of three states, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia.
Okay, so it's right there in the corner.
Right on the Chattooga. And there's actually a rock, and it's out in the river, so you don't want to go to it unless the water's low. That is the official boundary marker for Georgia and for North Carolina. And
so that rock is touching all three states. That's pretty. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty neat, and some beautiful trails out there. Some really remote trails, which I like. I like to kind of, like I said, go where you're not going to see a ton of people, and it's pretty. But North Georgia is great.
Rabun, you ever been up there?
Rabun County, Georgia. I've been there several times.
We played a football game up there when I played in Gainesville at Riverside, and we played up at Rabun, and I just remember thinking, I'm standing there on the football field, and you know the sun hasn't. It's at sunset, and I'm so distracted, like I'm not even paying attention to, you know, the warm up drills or anything, because this football field literally just looked over this beautiful valley up there, and it was best view I've ever seen from a football field, without a doubt. And I was just like, man, you know, I'd love to play this game right now, but can I just look at this for a second? It was really cool.
It's pretty country. I do Great Smoky Mountain National Park, you know, quite often. Tennessee. I like the North Carolina side better. You know, if I had to choose. Most people don't go there too often either.
Of Smoky Mountains?
Yeah. Because the most popular area is going to be over towards the Gatlinburg, you know,
Tennessee.
Pigeon Forge area. But when you come back over into North Carolina, you've got some really nice trails back there. And then you've got, you know, just right across I-40, you've got Max Patch, you know, which is a beautiful, beautiful place to hike. Appalachian Trail runs across those balls.
Now, getting out of the mountain regions, do you ever go down to like Congaree or anything like that down there?
Yep, I've hiked Congaree and the Francis Bidler Swamp, and I just got back from the Florida Keys, and we went hiking down there on some trails. I've actually hiked in New Orleans.
Not the first place I would have thought of when I think of hiking trails, the Florida Keys.
And there's the Florida Trail, which is sort of, you know, more panhandle-y, sort of Tallahassee area.
Yeah, it's that trail is I think looking to traverse the whole state, and I read
they want to expand it to the whole
across the United States, actually.
Really?
Right up to Mississippi.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like another an alternative to the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, you know, out there. So.
I'm actually surprised that there isn't already something like that. I thought I had heard of something called the Transamerica Trail.
The Transamerica Trail, you got that, and maybe it links with this. Like I said, I just read an article, and I was like, let me put that in my mind, go back and read it at some point and see.
There's a lot of those, and they basically just connect smaller trails together. Yeah. But like you have the PCT, which is like the whole thing is it's the PCT, and then you have the AT, which is it's the AT, whereas, you know, it's just sort of connecting a lot of these smaller trails, and, you know, you might even come across parts of it where that, you know, people haven't even been at in a couple years to even maintain. So, but if you were to have something that was, you know, went down the Mississippi from the top of Florida, hike down the that side, I guess, through that Tampa area, down to the Panhandle, and then into Floribama, which is, if you ever get the chance to go to Floribama, you should. That is a place.
I have been there.
You've been to Floribama.
Yep.
It's fun.
It's different. It's not Florida. It's not Alabama.
It's Floribama. But have that, you know, run the Mississippi all the way, maybe down even to Canada.
Yeah.
Would be, and it be just a distinct trail.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe somebody will hear this podcast and say, "Hey, let's do that." But
hopefully.
I was under the impression that's kind of what they were getting at. But yeah, I mean,
it just makes me think of something my old pastor used to say. Well, it sounds like the Lord's laid that on your heart.
Do it. I don't want to. But yeah, swamp hiking, beach hiking. You know, you can go on South Carolina coast. Yeah, you can go out down there to Bull Island, some of the barrier islands.
Wadmalaw.
Be let out for the day by ferry. And just hike all day, and it's funny because I tell people all the time. Then you run into the what I call swamp bears, which are alligators.
Swamp bears,
and they don't want to. They actually do want to eat you, and
they're not fond of blueberries.
They won't. They want your eyeballs.
Yeah, so you'll run up on those. I mean, the islands are kind of covered with those, littered with them. But it's fun to be hiking down a trail and a marshy type
splash.
Yeah, or look and there lays, hey, look at that log. No way, it's an alligator. And I've had some up closes with those, and they're pretty docile creatures unless they're you get too close like anything. But hiked over in Okefenokee Swamp, which is one of my favorite areas to hike.
It's one of my favorite names.
Yeah, Okefenokee, Everglades National Park. You know, so
10,000 islands.
Yeah, so there's beautiful places to hike that are not in the mountains.
And trekking doesn't necessarily mean hiking. I mean, you go over Florida, take a paddle, go to those mangrove islands, and you can, they got some sand islands out there. You can go camping. I did that. Over in 10,000 Islands, which was a lot of fun. You've got Crystal River, which is a lot of fun. You got your manatees over there.
Manatee right under you, yeah.
All right, put on your thinking cap for a second. Hit the button on the Wayback Machine. Now, you've been hiking and trekking for most of your life now.
Yes.
All right. Now, think back, if I asked you, pick out one of the most significantly memorable trips that you've ever taken, either for a good reason or a bad reason, either because of the gorgeous scenery or something went terribly wrong and you live to tell about it. I mean,
Every hike.
But everybody's got their favorites. Everybody's got their experiences that really stick out in their mind for one reason or another. Tell us about one of those.
I can tell you about one. I would say this, though. I think every hike has that near-death experience, and every hike has that, wow, I was born for this kind of experience, which is maybe why I like hiking so much. But probably one that sticks out in my mind the most, only because of the sheer awe of it, was, and I posted actually a picture on my Instagram today. I went there a year ago, the Badlands, hiking in the Badlands.
How was that?
That is still, I tell people, nothing could ever draw me away from where I live. I love it here because of the hiking, but that could. It was just,
but it's so different.
It was a spiritual experience is what it was. And, you hear people talk about that, but when you go and you see, and you realize, this is what the Sioux and Lakota Indians, they would see this, and it was sacred land to them. I mean, that's also how it is in our mountains. But when you see it, you can just see why. It looks like somebody came in there and painted everything, these beautiful colors. And it's just an amazing sight. It's just a spiritual experience knowing that, wow, this is here. And there's no other way to put it. You see the mountain goats jumping by, and you see the buffalo coming around running, and it's one of those things that I think that I will hike somewhere, take in everything I can, and I'm good. I don't have to go back. But that is a place I would go back to in a heartbeat.
Kind of a pilgrimage.
Yeah, it was just a beautiful area, and we had it. It seemed like we had the place to ourselves. What was wild about it, we didn't see a whole lot of people. Of course, we went to the remote southern end. Also, we went to the more touristy areas of it, but that area is not as you don't see as many people out that way, and it was just cool to sit there and look and see it.
What's still on your checklist?
Badlands cap right there on my hat.
What's on your checklist right now?
Right now,
that was going to be my next question.
What's next?
Let's talk about the bucket list.
And let me tell you this, because people ask me this. I don't have any desire to hike the whole Appalachian Trail, or Pacific Coast. I would like to see it, but I don't really care personally about going and hiking for months on end.
Well, I mean, you could do it in 9 days.
Yeah,
what was that?
I could do it. Yeah, I could run it.
There was a guy. He did it. It was 9 days or something. Like
he ran it, and a lady. We actually have a lady up in Asheville who has.
But why would you want to?
I mean, he had people set up at stations, and it's just one of those things.
Why would you want to? But.
Well, I mean, I guess those sort of people, they're just like, can I do it?
Just a motivation to do it.
Can I do it? Is this something that my body will let me do? I'm going to push it to the absolute limit. And it was funny that there was...
Right, I get it.
There was one guy who ran it real fast, and there was another guy who, walked it or something, and I think the guy who walked it really fast ended up beating the guy who ran it, which I thought was funny.
It's interesting. You have people who do all that.
Go read A Walk in the Woods by Bill. I'll free plug for Bill Bryson because he's one of my favorite authors of all time. But it's called A Walk in the Woods. It's a great book, and it has a lot of lessons about why, if you're not experienced, you shouldn't go do these crazy things.
Okay, well, if his book sales suddenly take a spike, he can buy us lunch.
His book sales are just fine. I promise you, he's one of the best authors currently in print today.
But as far as
bucket list,
my apex hike is going to be the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, and that's from the valley below, and it's about a 24-mile hike. That's not a whole lot of miles in the grand scheme of things, but when you're climbing up.
Cliffs,
really. And everything else. It's pretty cool. They
built it up there, so it'd be hard for other people to get to.
I don't want any conquistadors bothering them or whoever, but that's always been on my list. And I always envy people I know who've been there, and about 98% of them, I guess, always say, "Oh yeah, we drove up to here and walked to it or something, whatever." I think there's a short trail to it, but I want to do the whole entire.
That kind of
thing.
seems like cheating, doesn't it?
It does. That's the way it is.
Well,
anyway.
it's not. I mean, it's
It
not
depends.
cheating. It's
It's kinda
just
like-
these aren't.
I don't know. It kind of
hikers.
seems like buying your adventure.
Well, that
Well,
happens.
yeah, that's what a lot of people do these
Yeah.
days. That's-
Instagram is full of that, like where people pull to a pull off and sit down and take a picture of their feet hanging off and like, ooh, look at this great adventure I went on. But, I had this conversation with somebody just the other day. Like for me, I just hike to it and I take pictures. And when I'm there and it's cool I like to be on the parkway or something, and stop and say, wow, that's just majestic. Let me get a picture of that. But most of my stuff comes from hiking to it, and crawling over it. But
Did you ever see the Walter Mitty movie?
I read the short
Had,
story. I have not seen the movie.
Don Knotts.
No.
Oh, the other
Ben
one.
Stiller.
Ben Stiller.
Yeah, the
I wanted
new
to
one.
say Ben
Yeah.
Affleck. No, the Ben Stiller
Yeah,
Walter
the new
Mitty
one.
movie. Have you seen?
I haven't
that
seen the
one?
new one.
Yeah, there's a great scene in there where his character is chasing after this staff photographer played by Sean Penn.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole backstory about why he's chasing him down, but he's chasing him around the world, trying to catch up with him about this one particular picture that he took. He ends up finding Sean Penn's character in the Himalayas.
'Cause that's where
looking
Sean Penn
for
is.
yes, because
He's
that's
Sean
when I
Penn.
think Sean Penn. I think the Himalayas.
Oh.
No, he's
I think something weird.
he's trying to photograph a snow leopard.
Yeah.
I think it was
Rare.
It was something very elusive. Something that he's spent years trying to track down and get this perfect shot for. Well, Ben Stiller's character catches up with him right at the moment that he's found this cat. And he's got an enormous telephoto. He's way off in the distance watching this cat, and he's waiting for this perfect moment to take the picture. And that moment comes. The cat stops. It's right there in his view. The cat turns, isn't aware of his presence, but just turns perfectly. And you realize that in the movie, this is the moment that that he's been searching for all these years to get this picture. And he doesn't take the picture. Instead, he just sits there and looks at it. And then there's a little bit of dialogue between them about, why didn't you take the picture? And Sean Penn's character just says, well, sometimes these moments are just for me. I just want to be in that moment. So, when you've been talking about taking pictures of the hikes that you've been on, Instagram accounts, Facebook, things like that, there's been this question in the back of my mind while we've been talking, and I'd really like to know your thoughts on it. Do you find it difficult to feel like you're almost obligated to take a picture and put it up on a social media account? I mean, my thing is I travel by motorcycle.
Yep.
And a lot of times the people who I know will chide me a little bit about, well, why didn't you take a picture of XYZ while you were out there? And I always have this struggle between, look, there's this moment here, you were talking about the Badlands. It reminded me of a trip I took to the Texas Hill Country. Mm-hmm. And I'm, resonating with what you're saying about feeling the awe and the significance of being in that moment, of being in that place, and being hit with the awareness of how significant it is. And for me, there's something almost gets lost when you feel that almost reflexive desire to pull out a camera and try to take a picture of it, because there's no way that you can encapsulate this moment of personal significance and this awe and splendor. And I'm going to fit that on a 5-inch screen? There's just no way that can happen. Have you ever had moments like that yourself where it's almost like you just you want to try to explain it to people, but you know that you can't.
We just had one of those moments this past weekend.
Explain.
The eclipse.
Ah,
if you were
yes.
in the realm of totality, did you go see it?
Yeah, I did.
Pictures.
I drove.
You couldn't do it justice.
No.
I kicked myself when that moment came, like an idiot. What was the first thing I did? Reach for my camera and start to pick, and I thought, what the hell am I
tried
doing?
I tried to take a couple pictures. I did snap one good one, and it only took me about 30 seconds, so I still had pretty much 2 minutes to look at the whole thing, which was nice, but I was going to keep taking more pictures. And I was just like, no, I just need to see this, because the way I'm seeing it now and how beautiful it is now, none of these pictures are going to look anything close to what this looks like.
I took one picture of the eclipse, and when I posted it on Instagram, I even made mention of that. I said, I only snapped a couple of pictures. I mean, it was just one of those things that you don't, and I wasn't even looking through my camera when I snapped it.
No,
over to the side, I was
just,
chick,
yeah,
and one good one. So, I mean, that was an amazing event, and it's one I definitely wanted to just see with my eyes and remember.
And it's something that's now seared into my head, and just, because you see the pictures from a way off dark, and it's this little black dot, and then you've got this, sort of orange light around it. You see the up close pictures where it's this really dark dot and really dark sky and really white light. And I'm like, that's not really what it was for me. For me, it was seeing this really beautiful gray sky, because in Clemson, thank God it cleared up, because there was clouds over it about not 5-10 minutes before, and thank God they moved out. But it was just this clear gray sky that had gotten really dark now. It was maybe even a little darker than what it is outside. It was like twilight, like late twilight going into dark. And it was almost kind of a blue light coming out of it, this thin little ring, and I don't know. It was something that I haven't even seen anything close to describing in any of these pictures that I've seen. So
I'm just reminded of the old phrase, trying to capture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. When you were talking earlier about the people, we were talking about manufactured adventures, people rushing to a scene so that they can dangle their feet over the edge of something and take a picture and say, oh, look at the adventure that I did. I've seen those pictures like you're talking about. And every time I see them, I just want to take my laptop and just shake it and yell at it, like the person on the other side is actually going to hear me, and say, you're missing the point. Yeah. The point is to be there in that moment. You're not collecting pictures for the sake of pictures. The point is to experience that moment and that nature.
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with taking pictures of these or trying to, capture this moment for others to see.
I'm talking about a lack of focus.
But
be where you are.
But as long as you're able to say, okay, I took a picture, let me soak this in. Let me, take this for myself with my eyes, so that when I'm remembering it in my phone, accidentally got deleted and I don't have this picture anymore, I can still remember this moment in its clarity. That's important to do. But also, if you want to take a picture to share with your friends, I mean, like what you do with your Instagram account, that should be fine too.
And I'm so fickle. I think
you just want to tell somebody to get off your lawn.
But I agree with you, though. I agree with both of you. Actually, I come from both. I mean, I will say this in answer to your original question. There are far more pictures I have not taken than I have, and it'll always be that way.
That actually makes me feel good to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. As weird as that might sound, it's refreshing to know that there's still people who have their head screwed on straight enough to realize that, that the point of life, the value of what we've been given in life and in creation is to be in that moment and to be in awe of it. Let yourself be in awe. I mean, South Dakota is one of the 2 states I haven't seen yet. Vermont.
Okay.
And so you're talking about the Badlands, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh, God, he's been to the Badlands. I've wanted to go there so badly, and And I just loved listening to you. I could hear the reverence in your voice about being in that place and feeling the weight of the history.
Yep. When I go out in the woods anywhere, I go home. That's what I tell people. I can't explain it. You know, people have said, explain this.
No, no explanation necessary for me.
I'm going home to a place
it.
I've never been. I tell people that, you know, doesn't matter where it's at, but there's far more pictures I haven't taken, and there are places that will always remain secret. You know, maybe somebody else discovered, but it'll never be seen on my camera, because there's just places and moments that only need to stay in your eyes, in your mind, in your heart. It's kind of how I look at that. Now, on the other hand, you know, I'm out there and I was like, wow, you know, this place needs to be seen. You know, people need to know about this place. And so you come from that. But no, I do have a reverence for nature. I'm not a, you know, tree hugger. I'm a tree lover. I tell people that. It comes from a friend of mine. But I love being out there. And I like feeling like I'm somewhere where I belong, you know, because I go to my job and I go home and I drive on the interstate, blah, blah, but that's just not my home, so to speak. Out there is, you know, there's a connection with it. It's always been that way. And I think that's where you get a passion for that from. You know, from a young age, I felt more at home down in the woods, down playing in the creek, than I did in my bed at night, you know. And it's, some people go that way and some people don't. Some people it's fine just to see it and keep on moving. And I'm fine with that. I respect it. But no, I have a deep reverence for it, a deep respect for creation and for the beauty that, you know, it's just we don't deserve to even see. And it's in little places, and it's in places that you might not think it would be. And so from a young age with me, I can walk by something and just stop and say, wow, look at that flower, you know, or wow, look at that spider web. Look at that spider, you know.
Man, you are preaching to the choir. I completely understand what you're saying.
You got to notice it, and sometimes you just stop and you take it in, and you know, you keep going after that. But I think that we need to notice those. With social media, I again, something I was talking about, we focus on the epic. You know, we always focus on the epic, just like the Eclipse. It's all epic event. You know, everybody's going crazy about it, but there's things we see every day that are just as beautiful, if not more beautiful, than an eclipse. And
on like a micro level.
Maybe even more rare. Yeah, on a more micro level.
Yeah, I've really struggled with almost kind of a philosophical argument about is what you just described right there. You know, we've developed almost a kind of a mindset in this country that only big and epic is good. Only new is good. You know, that and we forget that really when I think about the most personally significant events that have happened in my life, they're almost always the moments that were unplanned, unscripted. There were those little encounters that you'd have never seen coming, you'd have never thought were coming, but you turn a corner, metaphorically if not literally, and boom, there's this thing right there. And it only lasts for a moment, and then it's gone. And it wasn't this enormous epic event that half the country got to witness. You know, it was this little thing, almost like for just a moment, it was kind of like God pulled the door open on the grandfather clock and, you know, and stopped the metronome and kind of tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, look at this.
One of the most significant things I've ever seen, it's probably one of the most mundane, but I was in Shenandoah National Park, and we had hiked a trail, and it was kind of one of those trails where you might run into, you know, several people, and it's to a waterfall, the big epic waterfall, you know, and I didn't feel well that day. I was hot or whatever, and I said, I'm not hiking down to that thing. I'm just going to sit up here, which almost never happens. And I sat there, and the crowd kind of stopped, not crowds, but, you know, no one came by, and it was just really quiet. I'm listening to the birds, and I looked up, something caught my eye right up the trail just a few feet from me, and a bobcat stepped out of the woods.
Oh, wow.
Right onto the trail, and he just stood there.
How far away?
I mean, he was just 15, 20 feet from me.
Wow.
Which is rare because they're not, and we probably passed him and didn't even know
they're
it.
very solitary.
Very stealthy. Yeah. And he walked out and he stood there, and I still can remember his pose. And my first inclination was to, hey, let me get a picture of this. But then I just stopped. And I said, I'm not going to get a picture. But B, what's the odds?
If you try to get the picture, you're going to miss the moment.
You miss the moment. He turned and looked at me, or she, and kept on up the hill. And that always stuck with me about, wow, that's just something most people don't ever see. You see them in a zoo, or maybe you see them in a preserve or something, but just in his natural habitat. Mm-hmm. And that always stuck with me. Another thing that will always stick with me is I had a young lady who worked for me, and she was I wouldn't say she's a mentor, but we love nature. We talked about hiking and about small things and things like that. She came up to me one Christmas and she said, I appreciate everything you've invested in me, whatever. I have something for you. I was like, what is it? And she opened her hand, and it was a cheesy plastic Native American head, like used to probably went on a brooch or something at some point, and his nose was broken off. And she said, this reminds me of you. And I said, well, what? What is broken in India with a broken nose? And she said, no. She said, this is spirituality behind it, and the fact that, they loved the land so much, and they loved nature so much, and you talk like that. And that this reminds me. I've kept it with me it goes hiking with me every time I step out of my door.
And I bet you that's probably the kind of thing where if your house were on fire, you would run back in to go get it.
I would go get it. And it's a cheap little plastic thing that was dated by a lady in 2001 or something. I don't even know she doesn't even know where it came from. But little things like that just stick with you and connect forever, whether it be a little gift or whether it be an experience. It's important, and that's why I like being out in the woods, because you have many of those.
Well, thank you so much for sitting here and talking with us. Do you have any? What do you got to plug? What's coming up with you? What are you doing soon?
Plug? Oh wow! I actually am
free advertising.
Yeah, I know. I will be teaching in September, instructing a class at Wofford College through their lifelong learning program on hiking. It's an introduction.
Now, is
to
that
hiking.
for students, or is that for?
That's for the community.
Community.
Yeah, community.
Okay. How do people get in touch with you and sign up for that?
People can actually go to wofford.edu and go to lifelong learning, and I'm right there, and you can sign up for the class.
And
are there costs associated?
There are
with
costs.
It?
I have not looked at the booklet to see what the cost is, but there's a small cost, but it'll be worth every penny. Anyway, what it is, it's going to be 4 classes, 2 classroom lectures, and 2 hikes, local hikes. We're going down to the Packlet River Heritage Preserve. If you haven't been there, it's a great place to go. It's a couple-mile trail. It's really beautiful. A lot of history. And then we're going to do one that no one I've met hardly knows about, and that's the Stevens Creek Heritage Preserve, which is over on Cannon's Campground Road. Okay. And it's a little bit more of a tougher trail. And we're going to do that, but my whole aim with that, and I appreciate Morgan Jordan and Jason Nichols for reaching out to me about it. They came to me and said, hey, we think you'd be good for this class. Yeah. And my whole thing is I want to instill a passion for hiking and nature with these
When
folks.
is this going to happen, these classes?
This happens September 18th is the first one, and it's 4 consecutive weeks after that, or 3 after that.
Okay.
And then
and
I'll
you
do
said that's at Wofford?
Wofford College.
So WOFFORD.edu.
Yep. And besides that, just my normal couple times a month, or couple bi-monthly, I guess, group hikes that I do, my meetups.
What's the next one you're planning?
September 9th into Linville Gorge.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Are you going to go, what path are you going to take down?
We're taking a path that is unnamed. It's going actually as part of the 4 trails, and the primary trail, and that's what's called the Rock Jock Trail, which is a remote, rarely
What's
used
the
trail.
one that had that bridge that got washed out? What's that? You know the trail I'm talking about.
A bridge that got washed out?
It was,
the Linville Gorge Trail.
Yeah.
The loop.
One,
yeah, that's.
Can't remember the name of it.
I think it's just a Linville Gorge Trail.
Well, that bridge got washed out in a flood. You remember back in I think it was 2013 when there was just such bad flooding up there. I had gone down there. Gosh, it must have been a week before that. It was crazy because I go down there and it's we were doing rock climbing, we were bouldering. I like
bouldering.
Upper Wonderland, that sort of area over there. And we heard the next week with all that flooding that the bridge was washed out. And then, not even a year later, there was a fire that went through there.
All the time.
I need to go back there.
Yeah,
but,
September 9th.
September
Come with me. Yeah,
right.
I've got 5 or 6 people who are going to go, and all I ask on this trail is that you be in good physical condition. And,
Well, that rules me out.
because it's an 11.5 mile hike,
Yeah.
but it's a toughie, considered the toughest one in the gorge. So
Okay.
just you have to work for it if you want to see it.
Gotcha.
And then there's some other good trails up
There's
there
tons
too.
of
If you're interested, Hawksbill's up there, which is not a bad trail.
Table Rock, not a bad
and it's
trail.
very,
Short off
very
mountain.
rewarding.
Yeah. Everything's rewarding. I mean, every view of the gorge is amazing.
It's insane.
Well, it's been really illuminating having you on the show.
and where can they find you online?
I really appreciate it.
Social media.
They can find me at WordPress, at Instagram, or Facebook at Carolina Trekker.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. It was good to
I
have you on the
appreciate being
show.
here. It was great.
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me come on.
Oh,
And that is this week's episode of the Northwest Corner podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.